Okay, so last week we watched this movie. Let's look at today's discussion questions and let's talk about them together. So, the first question, the film has a lot of exposition, it gives you a lot of information. Which parts do you think were harder to understand? And why? And how could they be made easier to understand? Ideas? So jumping between universes. So there is a big part of the exposition that tries to tell us, like, how do these universes connect to each other? How do you get from one to the other? And you're saying that information came a little too fast. Um, in the end, could you understand how they did it? Okay, so it looks like not really. Yeah, so the idea that they were trying to say is using that device on their ears, if you do something unlikely or random, that device can let you jump to another universe. The less likely thing you do, or the more random thing you do, the further away you can jump. And so that's why for a lot of the movie, people are doing crazy things because they're aiming for like a different universe so they can learn a skill that they need at that moment. So do you think the movie could explain that in a better way? The way that it does explain it is um, after like a fight scene, Wayman and Evelyn are like sitting under a table, right? And Wayman very quickly gives Evelyn this information, and the movie shows us what that looks like. But apparently, that's still not easy to understand. So, how do you think that information could be presented in an easier to understand way? What do you guys think? Okay, yeah. So for some people, the explanation was good enough, but for some people, it was maybe too fast. So maybe you think they could slow down. Would that help? Could be. Other ideas? Okay, so we're talking about that everything bagel. So according to the explanation from the film, by putting everything, literally everything, onto this one bagel, it creates kind of like, as you said, it's a black hole. But in physics, a black hole is something that sucks in everything, including light. But in the movie, this bagel sucks in meaning. So the idea is, in scientific terms, we call this a loss of information, right? Jobu Tupaki, I can't believe I'm saying this name, um, is fragmented among all of the multiverse. So her life now lacks a central meaning. She is everything at the same time. And so the everything bagel is the reverse of that. She is everywhere, but everywhere is in the bagel. So structurally, it makes sense that this is something that she's looking forward to. But we know that in an ordinary human life, you can't have all meanings and you can't have any meaning You only have one life. So either you become like, I'm going to call her Joy, and you don't know what you're doing, or you get sucked into the everything bagel, and you have all meaning, and you basically no longer human, or like you're dead. So in a sense, we can say that it's a death of consciousness. And the film, of course, has to represent that visually. And so we get a picture of Joy walking toward the bagel. But I think it's not physical, I think it's mental.
So it's like the everything in bagel means that the ultimate.
It's one of those, like, okay, so in everyone's life, you should choose your own goal, right? Uh, if you fully obey someone else's goal, then it's harder to say that it's your own life. The bagel represents that one goal that could be forced on everyone. Does that make sense?
That kind of like standard.
Yeah. Um, well, we'll get it more into the everything bagel in question two. Yeah. So yes, this is something that the film does not explain very clearly. It sort of uses suggestions and color and symbolic association to let you know that the everything bagel is dangerous. But it doesn't really explain exactly why it's dangerous. We know why jumping too many universes is dangerous because we have the example of what happened to Joy. So when Evelyn decides to do the same thing, we know that it's dangerous. But the everything bagel is completely new. So I guess one interpretation is you can say that nobody in the movie understands what it is either. They just know that it's bad. But maybe we can make some sense of it as viewers, and that brings us to question two. But before that, do you have other thoughts about question one? Other things that you think could be explained more clearly? No? Okay, then let's move to question two.
I wonder like as part one, part three. Yeah, so
Okay, so we're still in question one, and you're bringing up the division of the film into everything, everywhere, and all at once. And your question is why?
those has an effect.
Oh, is it does this separation fit into the three act structure, which is usually the first act introduces a problem, the background and the problem. The second act shows you how the characters try to solve the problem, and the when the problem is solved or the characters give up, that begins the third act where they finish up everything else. Yeah. So you're wondering if these three parts of the film fits that structure. What do you think?
I think it fits, but normally when we watch a movie, maybe like old movie will say some title, some parts of the movie, but normally like in like a modern movie, it doesn't see some kind of a structure that really obviously say, oh, this is part one, part three. It just told you how this the beginning and climax and ending.
Okay, so you think it does fit, but your question is like, why does the film tell us this, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah, it could, right? So we can imagine, what if the film did not give us these separations? How would it feel different? Do you think it would feel harder to understand? Do you think maybe there would be more chaos and less structure? Could be, right? So here's what I'm thinking. I think the film is so full of crazy shit that it needs some kind of structure to help us follow what's happening. Like, even the parts of the film that are not fantasy, like Evelyn is dealing with taxes, with her family issues, with her business, these are also details that are given to us very quickly. We don't really have time to absorb everything that's going on. It can sometimes feel hard to really feel what Evelyn feels in those moments because it's moving so fast. So by giving us a strict separation, it could be mentally preparing us for a different way of looking at what's going on. If you remember, the end of the everything section and the beginning of the everywhere section is after Evelyn decides to shatter her mind just like Joy did as a way to fight back. So you can say the first section is, as you said, Act 1, preparing everything, explaining everything. Act 2, the second section, everywhere, is how Evelyn tries to solve the problem. And then after the problem is solved, we enter the third section, which is to close off everything else. So it does fit. But if you don't have those separations, um, between the first and second sections, I'm not sure how different those two would feel. The main difference is uh, Evelyn takes control. No longer is she waiting for Alpha Waymond to like save her. No longer is she looking for more information. She is now uh, coming up with her own strategy and following that strategy. But in terms of the aesthetic design of the film, it all feels very similar. The difference is instead of watching Alpha Women jump, now we're watching Evelyn jump. So I don't know if that difference would be big enough for us to feel the transition between sections unless we have that kind of division. And then, but between section 2 and section 3, that's more obvious, right? Because by the end of section 2, the problem has been solved. So it's a very clear distinction there. And so I think the second title is there only because the first title is there, and the film needs to follow its own rules to be consistent. But I also think it's a brilliant way to use the title of the film, right? It's everything everywhere all at once. Just happens to be the structure of the film. And it also follows the idea that the first part is about everything happening to Evelyn. The second part is about Evelyn trying to be everywhere at the same time. And the third part is where everything comes together and is solved all at once. So, the filmmakers could be showing off. I don't know. Okay, thank you. Other thoughts about question 1? Something else you hope the film could have explained better? Okay, if not, let's move to question 2. Is the film an allegory? So an allegory is when a film has a symbolic meaning and the meaning is the same for the whole film. So usually when we talk about symbols, we say, oh, this part means this, that part means that. But for an allegory, you can say that the symbolic meaning is consistent throughout the whole thing. So it's like the film is telling two stories at the same time. One is the story that we see, and the other one is the story of its meaning. Put more simply, if something is an allegory, that means that the major elements can all connect to the major elements on a symbolic level. I don't know if that makes any sense. So it's not just comparing one thing, it's comparing the whole film to another kind of story. Do you guys think the film is allegorical? Is it telling another story? Okay, what do you think it's saying?
I think the story about real life and so integrate way and show the problem of family and like parents wanting too much from their kids and it also show feeling like sadness and confused. The rest is family and love, crazy and the film show family are important, the most important and allegory is universe, multiverse, and everything bigger and Jubu.
Chupaki.
Chupaki.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so I think most of you would agree that the allegory has something to do with family, right? You were saying, on the one hand, parents wanting to control their children, maybe for what they think are good reasons. And on the other hand, children therefore feeling sad, confused, angry, and trying to find some way to like resist that control. And that's causing like family problems. So yes, I think you've pointed out the main allegory of the story, uh, sort of like it's using the idea of multiverses to show different possibilities, right? So for Joy, who is kind of stuck in her own situation, she really wants to see any possibility other than her own life. So in the allegory, sorry, in the film, that turns into she is everywhere at the same time. Whereas for Evelyn, in on the allegory, she wants to try to guide Joy on like what she thinks is the best path for her life. And so she tries to regain control of Joy, and that's why you can say she chases Joy throughout the multiverse. Um, good. So then how would you explain the everything bagel?
In the film is me. Everything is not me.
Okay. So it's so if Joy wants anything other than what she has, uh, that also means that she can't decide which one. So it all gets put together. But as we were saying earlier, that's not a real human life. So is that what you're saying? It's all of the possibilities put into one thing? Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to bring in a little philosophy here. But if we think that everyone has their own life and their own goals, then if everybody or if there's a goal that seems to be able to fit everyone's life and you try to pursue that goal, achieving that goal is the same as giving up your own sense of your life. It's death. So if the everything bagel represents some kind of goal that could apply to everyone's life, then Joy, if she in some sense achieves the everything bagel, then it's also her death. This is from Sartrean existentialism, Sartre. Um, but we don't have to be so philosophical about this. Another possible meaning could be, you know how like when Evelyn or anyone else kind of looks at the bagel, they lose their sense of self, and they don't really want to do anything anymore. They just want to stand there and stare at the bagel. Does that remind you of anything? It reminds me of depression. When uh, Joy now has lost all meaning in her life, she's not motivated to do anything. She just kind of wants to stare at all of the possibilities without actually doing any of those possibilities. Yeah, to me, it kind of resembles the idea of depression, right? 요리든. So, like, this is something that um, we know can happen when you're faced with too many choices and you lose a sense of direction. You can lose motivation, and if that continues long enough, you might fall into depression. You can also say that because Joy is feeling so much pressure from her family, uh, she also no longer feels like she is in control of her own life and loses hope, and that also can end up in depression. So the everything bagel could also be a depression bagel. Do you think that makes sense? Yes, Nietzsche. When you stare into the abyss, never forget that the abyss is also staring into you. Yes. So the idea here is if you like are tempted to look at something that you're not prepared for, that will also affect you. So in this case, if Joy is she wants some kind of meaning in her life, but if in trying to do that she tries to take on too much, right? The everything bagel, it's everything. It's too much for one person. That will also have an effect on her. So yeah, that's kind of what we're talking about. Yeah. good. Other thoughts on this question? We can also think about like Wayman, right? Um, yeah, in the beginning, it feels like he's just an annoying guy who doesn't take things seriously. But later in the film, he is able to explain that he also sees what's going on, but instead of like trying to gain control of the situation, he takes things step by step. And so his attitude also avoids the problem of the everything bagel, trying to do too much, trying to control too much. Instead of adding everything onto the bagel, he adds one thing at a time. And he says that this is his deliberate strategy. And you can see this, especially in how he adds those googly eyes onto everything, right? A bag of customers' laundry could be seen as a heavy responsibility, but when he adds eyes on them, it suddenly becomes cute. And that the googly eye later becomes the symbol of Evelyn's new realization that she doesn't have to control everything. She can take things step by step in her relationship with Joy, in her relationship with Deirdre, the tax authority, with her in her relationship with her customers, one step at a time. Yes, Brian.
就感觉这个电影的话，它是用一个蛮宏观的一个主题，然后去包装一个家庭之间，特别是东方家庭，他们东方的对于家庭的那个爱吧，这样，因为那个爱吧，就是它是一代一代会传承。
Brian, I'm going to cut you off because you're getting into question 3. Yeah.
Sorry.
So I'll come back to you soon. Okay. Do you have other thoughts about question 2? Okay, sorry. You were saying how this film seems to be especially relevant to Asian families. Please continue.
所以我会讲的有点委屈掉那种感觉。但反正就是你会看到说，就算他们已经，因为他们好像是从中国，然后又移民到美国去生活这样子。然后你刚才去看中国的话，他爸爸也是对他那个 Evelyn 的那个决定，就比如说不应该跟那个男生走这样。就是他那个怎么讲，上一辈的人都会对下一辈的决定去有所去指责也好，或是做一个影响。那 Evelyn 对 Joy 的话，他其实就是最后算到了一个环境，但是那个文化它就是深根在骨子里面的。你不会因为说你表面上去到另一个国家已经会了他们的语言文化背景的东西，但是你骨子里的东西还是没有变化的。
OK，
就算可能表面上我们会遵循说可能美国跟我们就开放说什么哦，尊重你的选择，你的决定都是你的这样。但是真的下定决心去做的时候，你其实会在旁边做一些隐喻性的手法，旁敲侧击的去影响他的选择，让他变成是上一代父母心目中他想要样。所以他那些多元的可能性就变得有点压缩这样。
Okay, let me see if I can take that answer and fit it into question 3. So you began by saying that the film seems especially concerned with family dynamics in the Chinese context. And you said that, in fact, one of the strongest pieces of evidence for this is that the setting is in the United States, but the family logic still seems to be more traditionally Chinese. So, like, even though they have crossed an ocean, the way that Evelyn behaves toward Joy is similar to how her father behaved towards her. And so you're saying that the point of this film seems to be to examine this logic and to see if it needs to be changed, and if it does, how to change it. Yeah? So the target audience, according to this answer, seems to be Chinese immigrants to the US. Or we can open this more broadly, traditional immigrants from traditional Eastern cultures who arrive in the West and have raised their next generation in the West.
他的那个会，他那个影响是潜移默化。你好像在反过来，你可能假如 Evelyn 是第二代，他爸爸是第一代，然后 Joy 是第三代。你就算你作为第二代，你在小时候可能有去反抗过第一代的父母的选择，这样子。那就是你曾经有过那个叛逆的选择，可是你在对你的下一代的时候，其实下一代他也想要做那个叛逆的选择的时候，你却会你的想法却变得跟你的第一代很像。
Right. So you've noticed that culture is not entirely dependent on your current culture. The fact that Evelyn is in the US does not change her parenting instincts. Her instinct is to be a parent is to do what her father did to her, even though think she didn't agree with her father then. Um, I think this is something that happens quite a lot. Often when we have to take on a new role, whether it's becoming a college student, a parent, a teacher, or some other kind of role, if nobody like sits us down and teaches us how to do it, then we learn from our own experiences, whether it's a good experience or a bad experience. So we see an example of this here, right? Evelyn has not, nobody taught Evelyn how to be a parent. So she can only use the model that she has experienced. Um, okay. So do you guys think that it makes sense to say that the target audience for this film is immigrant families from traditional cultures who end up in the West? Okay. So the second part of the question, are you the target audience? Wait, so Taiwan is a Western country to you? I mean, it could be. Okay, so uh, do you feel like the film is talking to you? Hello, students. We are welcome to join the conversation. Great. So we don't have enough people today, so we're talking together. We're doing every question. Yeah. Yes. So do you feel like the film is talking to you? You do? Okay. Good. So for the Taiwanese students, do you feel like you are the film's target audience? Question two. Do you feel like the film is talking to you? I'm gonna take that as a no. Like maybe it's not exactly uh, same as your own experience. So in that case, do you feel like the fact that the film kind of misses the mark for you? Do you think that makes the film feel worse or like emotionally less powerful? Maybe it doesn't have the same kind of meaning for you. Do you have that feeling? Kind of? Okay. Do you want to say more? Like, are there some examples or which parts made you realize, hey, maybe it's not for me? Okay. So I guess maybe it's the parts that have to do with Joy's rebellious attitude toward her mother, or maybe how her mother tries to control her. Maybe near the end, when everyone is like, fine, if I can't control you, I'll follow you. Something like that. Maybe in your own life, you have not felt such a strong sense of rebellion against your own parents. Could be. So if that's the case, that it feels different for the target audience and for the non-target audience, then perhaps that difference is because of immigration. Because the Taiwanese students here mostly have not felt that cultural gap between yourself and your parents. So there's kind of, even if you feel unsatisfied by how your parents are treating you, maybe you don't have that kind of support or evidence to help your argument that, hey, there's another way to raise kids because you're in the same culture as your parents. The values of this culture are the same or similar as the ones that your parents are using for you. um, Rebellion feels less justified. Do you think that makes sense? Like, and I guess this is also pointing to one of the benefits of going abroad, experiencing other cultures. You get to see how different people do things differently, and you can think about whether the way they do things could be a good idea. Right? I'm sure our Thai students, after they go home, will have some interesting conversations with their friends or their family members who have not left Thailand for this kind of exchange. Yeah. Okay. Other thoughts on question 2? All right. Let's move into question 3. Oh, sorry. That was question 3. Other thoughts on question 3? Okay. Let's move into question 4. We already talked about Jobu Tupaki, right? The relationship between Joy and her multiverse character. We talked about Joy's need for freedom, for possibilities, and how maybe she isn't able to handle so many possibilities. But what about Alpha Waymond and Alpha Gongong? Like, how are they related to their counterparts in that single universe? Like, let's take Alpha Waymond. How does the character of Alpha Waymond highlight some of the characteristics of the regular Waymond? Or how are they connected? They're played by the same actor, but if the multiverse is an allegory, how did regular Waymond turn into Alpha Waymond on this second story level? Right? We talked about the connections between Joy and Jobu Tsubaki, right? So can we use the same logic for Waymond and Alpha Waymond, Gong and Alpha Gong?
They are like a character in the main world. That
Yeah. Okay. So let's take it one by one. How is Alpha Waymond a reflection of regular Waymond?
like a women in main world. And he not confident.
Okay. So he's not very confident, but Alpha Waymond is very confident. Right. So regular Waymond, we actually don't get to see his perspective until very late, right? For most of the film, we see regular Waymond through the eyes of Evelyn. He is the kind of man according to what Evelyn sees. So in Evelyn's eyes, Waymond is unconfident. What was the other one? Like useless, I think is what you were thinking of. Yeah. So, but the alpha Waymond is the opposite, right? He's, as you said, he's smart, he's confident, he gets things done, he moves quickly. So at first glance, it looks like these two characters are opposites. But later in the film, we discovered that Waymond does know what's going on. He does have his own strategy. It's just that his strategy is so different from Evelyn's that it looks like it's not a strategy. Yeah. So that's how the two characters are connected. Alpha Waymond is kind of like how Waymond feels about himself in a way. He knows what he's doing. He's following his own strategy. Okay. What about Alpha Gongong? How is he related to the regular Gongong? He can speak English, I think is what you're trying to say. Okay. So like the regular Gongong cannot? Right. Okay. So that's one thing that's different. Alpha Gongong is better able to communicate. Um, is there a sense in which regular Gongong also is a good communicator? How? Well, we see at the end of the film, or not even at the end, like near the beginning, uh, Gongong is interacting quite well with what's the name of Michelle? Yeah, Joy's girlfriend, right? Yeah. So of course Michelle doesn't speak Cantonese, and it looks like Gong Gong doesn't speak English, but they get along well anyways. So even though Gong doesn't speak English, he's still a good communicator. We can even say he's a better communicator because he doesn't speak the same language. He, a lot of times people might think, oh, because someone is not very good with the language, there's a prejudice that maybe they don't think about things so deeply or so carefully. But of course, that's not true, right? It's simply that they have a harder time explaining themselves or expressing themselves. So we see that kind of with Gong. Because he doesn't seem to speak English or even Mandarin, there is a bias that maybe he's getting old, that maybe he doesn't understand what's going on. But the fact that he can get along with other people so well tells us he knows what's going on and he can navigate the language barrier. So that's kind of reflected in how Alpha Gong can speak directly in English. What are some other connections between these two characters? The body language. Can you say some more?
No. Joy and
Yeah, we talked about that, right? So what about we're still thinking about Gong and Alpha Gong. Okay, so when Evelyn is leaving, I guess it was Hong Kong. Alpha Gong, or sorry, Gong wants her to stay, and he says, "If you go, you're not my daughter anymore." Something like that, right? Okay, so how is that related to Alpha Gong? So I'm thinking about when we realize that this is not Gong, this is Alpha Gong. His goal is to stop Jobu Tupaki, right? When Evelyn tries to become like Jobu Tupaki, he then tries to stop Evelyn. So it seems to be saying something similar, right? It's saying if Evelyn doesn't follow his rules, she's no longer his daughter. He will no longer support her. And his relationship with Joy, this creates a kind of a tension in the movie because on the allegorical symbolic level, Alpha Gong is opposed to Jobu Tupaki. But in the regular story, we don't know if Gong will support Joy in her relationship with Michelle. If you look at the symbolic level, it's very dangerous. Maybe he won't accept it. But it turns out he thinks it's okay. He can accept it. So that's one example of where the allegory doesn't fit. These two characters are not the same, but for a good reason. Okay, good. Other thoughts about this question? All right, let's move on to question 5. How does the film make the fight scenes more exciting? Yes.
高跟法系，像以前那种
Okay, so the aspect ratio changes. I guess most of it is in regular widescreen, which is like 1.77 to 1. But then when the fights start, the aspect ratio flattens. So I guess it's like 2.21 to 1, like super widescreen. And you're saying that makes it feel like a more traditional action movie.
或者是有很近代的2002结束，是因为他们成本没有到第二三集那么的丰富，所以他们第一集的打戏比较偏向都是在
Are you talking about Homecoming and Far From Home?
然后
Spider-Verse? Tobey Maguire's.
然后
You said 2020. Okay, never mind.
对啊
2002.
然后
Okay.
然后到第二集的时候，因为第一集大卖嘛，然后第二集的话，他把那个荧幕就是比例就放得很，因为它是可以容纳他跟那个 Dr. Hart 他们之间的工作室，所以这个也是一样的概念，把画面变得很浮化，他们动作比较显。
Okay, so you're talking about why uh, super widescreen is better for fight scenes, and you're saying the reason. And your example is from Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2. The reason is because when you have super widescreen, you can see more details. You have more elements on screen. And that makes sense because we humans walk around horizontally. So when we fight, it's usually fighting horizontally. So you can cut away like the vertical space, add it to the horizontal space, and we get to see more of the fight. Yeah? Okay, good. So it's a changing aspect ratio to better show us information related to the fight. What else?
actor 关系，有人说他是下一个镜头，因为它里面很多打戏，用可能他附近场加剧，那关机位他也是他是拿那个给你看。
Okay, yes. So it is true. Alpha Wayman, the way that Alpha Wayman fights is kind of like Jackie Chan in the specific sense that he doesn't need special weapons. He can create weapons for himself. But it's different from Jackie Chan because Jackie Chan, as we saw the previous week in Rush Hour, in his fight scenes, he's often losing until he wins, right? Like in the pool hall, when he accidentally calls somebody a bad word and everybody starts fighting him, he keeps saying, I don't want trouble, I don't want trouble, and he keeps like hitting people. So like for a Jackie Chan fight scene, he's always losing until he wins. Not for Alpha Wayman. Alpha Wayman is always winning. Okay, so I think that's something we can add to this answer. Confidence. When you have a confident actor doing a fight scene, it can also feel more exciting. You can think of like Bruce Lee is the typical example. Everyone knows Bruce Lee is a better fighter than his enemies. We're just waiting to see how he will kick their butts. That's kind of exciting as well. But of course, Jackie Chan films are also exciting because we're waiting. We know Jackie will win. We're waiting to see how he will turn from losing to winning. But it's a similar logic. We're waiting to see how our hero will win. Okay, good. What are some other ways that the fight scenes are made more exciting?
The rock
Okay.
hit on back.
Yeah. Okay. So there's not just a focus on the actors and the movements, there's also a focus on the objects. So as Brian was saying, he uses regular objects, but then the camera specifically focuses to make sure we see how he turns the object into a weapon. And that's pretty exciting because it builds expectation. We expect the weapon now with extra rocks to be more dangerous. And indeed, it's true. But here's something. How do we know that the fanny pack hurts more with rocks inside? How does the film show this to us? Did you notice that the dust, when it hits somebody and it's supposed to be harder, there's more dust that comes off of that person to show like it's hitting so hard that like they're giving off dust. But of course, in real life, that doesn't happen. That's special effects. So that's another way that the film makes it more exciting. It's not just showing two body parts hitting each other. It's using special effects to show the impact of one thing on a body. Yeah. To add visual elements to make it feel like it's more powerful. You can think of manga, right? If it's a soft punch, there's like a small spark. If it's a huge punch, then it's a big spark.
以前武术片他们打架的时候，就是打出去的时候，你手会有那个粉。
Yes, exactly. But of course, in the older Jackie Chan films, it was very deliberate. He would stick his hand into the flower. But here, it's purely special effects, right? The rocks they're wet. Wet rocks don't give off dust. So it's a special effect. What else does the film do? Okay.
就是第一个是反差感，那个成龙一样，他就是讲说老师讲到武术，你跟成龙他的表面上的 appearance 的形象方面是有差异。李小龙他看起来就是一个很有自信的，你感觉他看到他跟谁对打，他感觉就有，因为他就是 main character。可是成龙的话，因为他是表面上是丑角，可是你会想说这个丑角他也是发挥出，就是他也蛮。
Okay, so what I think you're saying is, even though Alpha Wayman is more like Bruce Lee in that we can tell he's going to win, that character is based on the regular Wayman, whom we never expect to win. So in fact, by combining two characters into the same actor, we get the benefits of a Bruce Lee kind of fight and a Jackie Chan kind of fight. We know he's probably going to win, but we're used to seeing him lose. That's a good observation. You had another one, right? I'm going to let you talk and then we're going to take a break. You forgot? Okay, let's
那个拍摄的摄影技巧，因为通常因为武术类它很多动作，那你就是用手指镜头，你不可能用平拍，这样动作会显得很无聊单调，因为代表说你要拍摄出在两个对场画面那个之间那个不切磋的那个效果来回。但是如果是以前的话，以前的武术指导他们可能比较没那么专业，特别你说美国跟香港比起来的话。
Okay, so in this film,
但这个的话，它是除了演员那个 actor 关基伟他本身是有武术底子之外，也加上拍摄的方式，就是更动态感，然后加上那个有一些你说 zoom in zoom out 那些，去加重那个你说他一拳打上去的时候。
Okay, okay. So at the beginning of your answer, you were talking about a handheld camera. But in fact, in this film, it doesn't use a lot of handheld, right? You were saying, in fact, this film uses a static camera, but lots of close-ups, lots of inserts, lots of zooming in to give that feeling of action. Even though the camera itself isn't moving, instead it's a lot of very quick editing from this shot to this shot to this shot to this shot. But each shot is quite static. Yeah. And in fact, you were also saying something about like a parallax or like a shift. We saw a very good example of this near the beginning of the first fight, right? Alpha Wayman is holding the fanny pack, and then the camera shifts to the side, and we get to see his enemy as well. And that gives us attention. It sets the scene, shows us the space to prepare us for that fight. Yeah. But that's not very often. We saw that like once. Yeah, it's a good homage to previous fight scenes. Okay, so I noticed two other things to make the fight scenes more exciting. One is the camera is slowed down so that the film moves faster. The fight scenes look exciting because things are happening faster than you. It's like YouTube on 1.5 speed, right? It's played faster, so it feels faster. It feels more exciting. And I think they did this in post-editing because you can tell the way that they sped things up is they took out half of the images. So not only does it move faster, it also feels less connected. It feels choppier. It feels more like a cartoon. It's not as connected. It's not as fluid. And so it makes it feel faster. And then it kind of slows down a little bit at every time somebody gets hit. So it's a very detailed control of camera speed to make it feel exciting. And then one last thing is lighting. Sometimes the film can be a little dark, especially in the universe where Evelyn is a movie star. But every time there's a fight scene, the lighting is slightly brighter than other scenes in the same space. For example, the fight scene in the office, in Gong Gong's office. When Evelyn enters, it's kind of dark, and then somebody throws a smoke grenade, it's very smoky. But when Evelyn starts fighting people, the lighting is brighter a little bit. So we can clearly see exactly what's going on. With brighter lighting, we get more details. With more details, we have more information. And with more information, it feels more exciting. Okay, other thoughts on this question? Okay, let's take a short break. Please come back at 1:55. And we'll finish the discussion, and then I'll introduce what we're going to do next week. Okay, let's continue. Question 6. So the film gives us many different universes. Which one or which few do you think is the least significant, least important, and why? Thoughts? The hot dog fingers one. Okay, why do you think that one's not as important? Okay, it's true. That universe doesn't give Evelyn a useful skill, doesn't help her solve any problems. So why is it in the movie? So as a joke? Okay. Do you think that there are other meanings in that universe? What's going on there? Right. Deirdre, the tax lady, is her partner. So that's connected in one sense to like early when Alpha Women says you have to tell her that you love her. What else is happening in that universe? Right. So that also like that can be seen as a metaphor. If you can't do it one way, you can do it another way. Um, but like the fact that Evelyn is in a relationship with someone who loves her back also seems to be quite important, right? It's something that she doesn't get from her daughter. It's something that she can't give back to her husband. It kind of shows her that it's possible for her to be in a loving relationship. And then one last important point about this universe is near the end, near the climax, when it feels like we're going to lose Joy, and then Evelyn gets her back again. The film goes through so many different universes to show loss and then to show recovery. And one of those universes is the hot dog fingers, right? It feels like Deirdre is leaving, but at the end, Deirdre returns. And that kind of links that universe to what's going on in our Evelyn universe. So you can say that it doesn't give Evelyn new skills, but it does show her different possibilities of life, and it does highlight what's going on in Evelyn's own universe at the same time. Yeah, do you think that makes sense? Okay. Other ideas? Are there other universes you think are not very important? Ah, the one the Rakakuni, the one with the raccoon on his head. Okay, yeah. So first of all, that is connected to the joke, right? Because like Evelyn misremembers the movie. Um, this is also a filmmaking joke because they can't actually show a chef with a rat on its head because of copyright reasons. It's a different movie. They can't just use it. So they had to come up with something similar but not the same. And so they came up with a raccoon. So that's the joke. But same thing for the hot dog fingers. Near the climax, we see the dude almost lose his raccoon. And then we see Evelyn like piloting him and helping him regain his raccoon, right? So it's on a symbolic level, it's also another universe where we see loss and then we see recovery. Um, but yeah, that universe seems to have less meaning to show Evelyn. She does learn a skill, how to use the spatula and the knife to help her fight. But yeah, overall, the symbolic meaning is not as strong, and the skill is used like once. Okay, what are some other universes that you feel might not be very important? Yeah, yeah. So as we were discussing, yeah. Okay, so how about when Joy is fighting Jobu Tupaki, and she's crazy, so she drags them through many different kinds of universes, right? One of them is like a cartoon, a child's drawing universe. Do you remember this? Yeah, they're 2D on the page, like they're like cartoons. Um, I don't know. To me, that just feels like a joke. The pinatas, right? So like when they're hanging from a tree and they're filled with candy, that part. So yeah, at first glance, that also looks just like a joke. But then later, during the climax, that's also one of the universes that appears. It's the one, it's one that represents Evelyn not being able to chase after Joy because they're stuck hanging there. So that's kind of, it's part of the lost section, and it's a bridge to the universe where they're both rocks. You would expect that if they're both rocks, they also can't chase each other. But that's where we get the reversal. That's where Evelyn starts chasing Joy. So okay, so the pinata universe by itself is not very important, but it gets us somewhere else. It's a bridge. Okay, good. Other thoughts? Other candidate universes that you think we could like not have? I think we covered most of the silly ones, right? You're thinking of another one?
Didn't mention about ceiling.
Like the hot dog fingers, the pinata, the cartoon, the stones. I think those are the silly ones. I think that's about it, right? Yeah. So, like, if you think about this, the way that we were talking about the importance of these universes, we were looking at two things. One, does it add to the story, like the symbolism? And two, does it give Evelyn some skill that she needs? And it seems to me that these are the two kinds of universes that we see in this film. Well, the third kind is as a joke, and that's the kind we're focusing on. So like there are three uses of universes in this film. Help the story or give its meaning, to help Evelyn, or to be funny. Okay, other thoughts on this question? Okay, last one. Do you think the ending makes sense? Why or why not? The climax, the way that Evelyn gets Joy back. Do you think that makes sense? Yes? Why? Or how would you explain it? Because right before the ending, Joy is like, it's so tiring being with you. Just let me go. And Evelyn says, fine, I'll let you go. And then she doesn't. So how does she get Joy back? What's the logic there? Okay, so you feel like it doesn't make sense.
我是觉得脱单是没有代表说他本身在就是在找 the logic，他脱代表就是
Okay, so you have not yet decided whether it makes sense or not.
也，但是他的第一印象不是。
But it feels like it's a leap. Like it doesn't really fit together intuitively. Maybe it makes sense, but you have to think about it. And you're still thinking about it. Okay, so let us know if you're finished thinking about it. Yeah, okay. Okay, but you guys said yes, it does make sense. So can you explain what the sense is? Okay, so the moment before when Evelyn says, fine, I'll let you go, that's when she accepts that she cannot control everything about Joy's life. What happens in the next moment? How does she find a way to reconnect with Joy? Uh, what do you guys think? Do you think it makes sense? Okay, so you're saying it doesn't really make sense, but the filmmakers needed a happy ending, so they kind of bullshitted their way to a happy ending. Yeah. Okay. So that's one reason. And the way it doesn't make sense is because Evelyn says, "I'll let you go," and then she goes after Joy anyway. And for some reason, the way that she goes after Joy is different from how she originally tried to control Joy. But we don't really understand the difference. That's what you're saying, right? Okay. Thank you. So that's how it could not make sense. Have you guys found a way to explain how it could make sense?
你已经不太知道这个病，他已经到故事的那个，sorry，就是要把它做一个，就是赶紧做一个。
Okay, so you're agreeing with them.
对，我算是。
It doesn't really seem to make sense, but it's a nice happy ending anyway.
对，反正最后就是。
Yeah. Okay. So, have you found a way to explain your ideas?
think Evelyn saw herself in another like that she loved with man and she did
Ah, okay, okay. So you're saying that before Evelyn is controlling, but after Evelyn is accepting, and she goes after Joy to let her know that she accepts her. So instead of dragging Joy back, she's trying to follow Joy, but of course still stopping her from touching the everything bagel. And you're saying the reason for her change, one big reason is because Evelyn saw herself in a universe with a girlfriend. So she now understands what that is like. Or we should say she understands that it's exactly the same as having a boyfriend. Yeah. So like the gender doesn't really matter, it's the relationship that matters. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so from that logic, the confusion from these guys over here is that it still looks like Evelyn is pulling Joy back, but she's pulling Joy back from a different attitude. Before she's holding on to Joy, not letting her go. Now she's trying to stop Joy from destroying herself, but that's it. Like she doesn't. She gives a big speech to Joy, right? She says like, "You're right. It's so tiring. We're so different, but I'm going to follow you. I'm going to be your mother anyways." And the script doesn't really help us here, but the idea seems to be, no matter if I'm trying to control you or if I accept who you are, we are tied by family bonds anyway. And since you can't get away from that, we might as well find a way to live together. Okay, so like I guess it does make sense in a kind of fatalistic way. Like it's not a very hopeful message of freedom and liberation. It's more like you're stuck in this situation, you might as well find a way to make it work. But it is a sense of growth for Evelyn because Evelyn previously never considered compromise, right? When Joy is trying to introduce her girlfriend, Evelyn calls her a good friend. Um, and she says, "I understand, but." So it's not really a compromise. She's not really trying to accept Joy's relationship and Joy's like person. But so the end of the film, what really changes is Evelyn is willing to make compromises. She's willing to not just drag Joy to her, but also follow Joy wherever Joy goes. So they're still stuck together. And I think this is where we can go to the universe with the two rocks. Originally, uh, it feels like this is where Joy wants to be because now that they're rocks, Evelyn cannot control her. But then the Evelyn rock starts trying to get close to the Joy rock, and when Joy falls over the cliff, Evelyn follows Joy with her. So, like Evelyn in the first half of the movie is like trying to prevent Joy from going off the cliff. but Evelyn, after the climax, is willing to go off the cliff with joy. That seems to be the main difference here. Do you think that makes sense? Okay, other thoughts on this question?
就是刚刚那个说法，作为一个父母或家长，去让小孩避免不如他一起去犯，去跟他一起成。
Thank you. That's a good way of saying this. Yes. So Brian is saying another way to say this is as a parent, you can choose to try to protect your kids from all of their mistakes, or you can accompany your children as they experience those mistakes and to support them and to help them learn from those experiences. That's what you're saying, right? So this is the kind of the lesson that Evelyn learns. Good, I like that. Thank you. Other thoughts on this question? Okay, if not, that's today's discussion. Now let's talk about what you're going to be doing next week. So as you know, next week you're going to be presenting your group short films. Before the end of Wednesday, please upload your film to to YouTube, and then send me the link. And I'll put the link on the Moodle page. You can email it to me. You can use Moodle to send me the link. Okay, on the day, each group will introduce their short film, send at least one person. You can send more people, but at least one person to come up here and introduce your short film in English. And then we're all going to watch the short film together, and then your entire group will come up and answer questions. Everybody else, you can ask questions. I will also ask a question or two. And this will also be in English. Now, after each group, every person has to fill out a peer review sheet. Every person, not every group, every person. The peer review sheet has two parts. On the left, these scores are for your own group members. Please give me the student number, the Chinese name, and a score from 1 to 5 for each of your group members, not yourself, just your other group members. This is based on how much they have contributed to making this short film. 5 is they helped to do everything. 1 is they said hi and like bought us drinks. Or like they came up with some questions that helped us get an idea. Everyone who has said something in the group chat or has participated in a group discussion should get at least 1. Only give 0 to people you have never met before. They have not said a single thing. You don't even know if they're alive. Then you can give them a 0. Okay? The right-hand side is you will give a score for each film from other groups. So like after you're done presenting your film, you will also watch other groups' films. For each film that you watch, give a score from 1 to 5. This is based on 2 things: creativity and quality. So how good are their ideas and how well did they realize those ideas in their short film? And it's from 1 to 5. Also, 5 is the best, 1 is the worst. Now, here's the thing. From my own experience, students will often think that 5 means a perfect film. So there will not be many 5s. Most people will give 3 or 4. The problem is, if you translate this to percentages, 4 is 80 and 3 is 60. If everybody gives 3s and 4s, your final grade will be between 60 and 80. And that doesn't look very good. So what I'm saying is I encourage you to be open and lenient with your scores. Be liberal with your scores. Don't be afraid of giving 5. If you think it's a pretty good film, that's enough to earn a 5. Okay? Okay, now to make sure that everybody submits one of these, if you don't submit one, your grade, your personal individual grade will be lower. And please also pay attention to the deadline. The deadline is the same day before midnight. So remember to do this after you get back to your room. Yeah, I think I said everything. So give a grade to your other group members, give a grade to the other group's films. Don't give a grade to yourself. Don't give a grade to your own group's film. Now, I know some groups have group members that have not done very much. One job that you can give them is to introduce the film or to take the lead in answering questions about the film. That also counts as contribution. Okay? Now, for the grades of your group members, okay, let me put it like this. For the grades of the other groups, the average of these scores will be 50%, and then my score for each group will be 50%. And that will be the basis for your final grade. I will then look at the grades that your group members gave you. And if it looks like you participated and you helped make the film, then that will just be your final grade. But if your group members give you low scores and it looks like you didn't do much, I may lower your final grade. So the grade that you give your group members will not directly change that person's grade. It will give me information and I will decide whether to change that person's grade. But the grade that you give their films will directly affect their grade. Does that make sense? Clear? Okay, so that's next week. And so because we have 7 groups, please come on time. And then there are 2 more things to say. You have to submit this peer review sheet same day before midnight. I will give you your final grade here. Okay. After that, you will have 1 week to write course reflections. These are your daily grade, 20%. Let me show you what the question is. Write an essay in any language to convince me, that from having taken this course, you have learned something meaningful. What you learned need not be limited to what was taught and can be inside or outside the classroom. So this means maybe you came, you watched a movie, you joined the discussion, and then after you went home, you started seeing things in a new way, you started understanding more things. That also counts. So what you learned directly or what you learned indirectly, inside, out the classroom, outside the classroom, as long as it's because of taking this class, you can talk about it. The more details and analysis that you provide, the more convincing your essay will be. ChatGPT produces very unconvincing essays. I'm not going to care about your grammar and spelling, so you don't have to use AI to correct those if you don't want to. But you can also ask AI to correct your grammar and spelling. What I hope you don't do is to ask AI to just write an essay for you. Right? If you mindlessly use AI, you're going to get a low score. For this, you will get 3 possible scores. You could get 20, you can get 10, or you can get 0. Questions? Okay, so this is after class next week, and you will have 1 week to do this. Right? After class next week, and then 1 week later, midnight. When I give you your grade, and maybe I will also give you a comment, you will not receive a notification from Moodle. So you may want to come up on Moodle and check once in a while. Finally, we have this extra credit thing. If you want a higher grade or if you need a higher grade, you can do this assignment. Read the PDF file essay, use those ideas to look back on your own experience as a college student, and then write an essay of whatever equals 1,000 English words or more. So you can write your essay in any language, but when I put it into Google Translate, the result should be at least 1,000 English words. If your original grade is below passing, so below 60, and you do this and you do a good job, your final grade or your total grade will be 60. If your original grade is above 60 and you do a good job, I will add between 2 and 8 points to your total grade. If you have done this before, please tell me. I will give you another essay. If you use the same essay twice, I'm not going to count it. If you write your essay in English and you use Google Docs, there's an error that could occur. If you save a Google Doc as a Microsoft Word file, this might happen. You'll notice that 2 words are highlighted, but it says 5 words. It's counting each letter as a word. And because this assignment has a word count, this could really fuck with your assignment. So if you do type in English, I suggest you don't use Google Docs. Use Microsoft Word or like a notes app and then copy and paste it into Microsoft Word. And for this assignment, the deadline is a bit later, but I'm not going to wait until the deadline. I'm going to, as soon as your original grade has been decided, I will start looking at if you have submitted extra credit. So I'm not going to wait until June 19th. Okay, so that's next week and then everything after. Do you have questions? Okay, yes. So before midnight on next Wednesday, upload your short film to YouTube and then send me the link using email or Moodle or Teams or Line, or write it on a piece of paper and post it to my door. Okay? Okay, other questions? Okay, so that's it. For the rest of today, you can use this time to continue making your short film or to do other things. Please be on time next week.